religion and politics. Well, the two haven't always been joined at the hip, but they are now, and religion's impact on politics is only growing. Christian voters may have a greater impact on the 2024 election than ever before, and now a controversial new book is making some serious claims, causing Christians to question some in church leadership. The book, and I've got it right here, it's called Shepherds for Sale: How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. It even says that some Christian leaders have been co-opted by leftist billionaires, people like George Soros, and betray their positions on important issues like abortion, immigration, and human sexuality. The author is here tonight. She's also a culture reporter at the Daily Wire. Please welcome Megan Basham. And Megan, great to have you here. You were on our weekend show not too many weeks ago, and I said then, we've got to continue this conversation. So thank you for joining me so that we can dig a little deeper into the book.
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, it's a lot to cover. So I do a lot of in-depth research in it.
Well, one of the things that I appreciated about your book, and I really encourage people to get it, you don't just make wild, flailing accusations about Christian leaders and what they're saying that is different than what I would call biblical orthodoxy. You bring the receipts. I mean, it's noted very carefully with extraordinary details, page after page of exactly where did you come up with this information. So nobody can say, well, she's just throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it'll stick. It sticks all right because you documented it. What led you to the project? Let's start with the origin. Did you just wake up one day and say, hi, we got some people in the church that have gone off the left side of the fence?
Well, like so many other people, as a Christian, as a parent, as somebody who's deeply involved in my church, very involved in our Christian school, and I was working for an evangelical magazine at the time. I was simply experiencing all these things in, just an average Christian going about her life kind of way. Suddenly in 2020, I was seeing my church at the time promoting people like former National Institutes of Health Director Francis Collins as a trustworthy Christian brother, and telling me things that I felt as a Christian did not align with biblical principle. Things like telling us that we needed to keep our churches closed for months and months and months, that we couldn't sing, that some churches were segregating their congregations along vaccination status. And these are things that simply did not feel biblical to me. And as we moved into 2020, I then saw a lot of the church leaders taking up the language of social justice and critical race theory. I can tell you that my own church at the time, and this was the record scratch moment for my husband and I, sent out an email telling us how we could talk to our kids about their white privilege. And that was really the moment for me that I knew we have a significant problem in the church. And I began applying my journalistic skills to do some research into it. And then as I started reporting on these issues, particularly on evangelical leaders and their platforms and their partnership with Francis Collins to promote what we later learned were lies about the origins of the COVID virus and some other elements surrounding how that was handled by the federal government, it went viral. My reporting got a lot of attention. And at that point, I started having publishers come to me and say, hey, it seems like this is resonating with a lot of people. And at that point, I was offered a publishing contract, and I had the opportunity that I really believe I was given by God to dig into this in a deep way and start to ask some questions about why are these church leaders doing it? And one of the things I found, and as you said, I was very careful not to just speculate. When I say George Soros's foundation, Open Society, wanted to target evangelical leaders in order to harness their influence, well, they say that in their own documents. Their own documents reveal that they were giving money to programs that evangelical institutions were involved in. So that's really what all of this was documenting in a very hard, concrete way why we were seeing what we were seeing. So it wasn't so much that I was giving Christians new information about what was happening. I have been explaining the why for why it's happening.
The economy is uncertain. You never know whether your money's worth as much today as it was yesterday. It's one of the reasons I buy gold from American Hartford Gold. American Hartford Gold has earned a 5-star rating and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. Be sure to tell them Mike Huckabee sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. Call 844-417-1010 or text Mike to 998899. You'll be glad you did business with American Hartford Gold. Until you started writing about this, Megan, I intuitively could see it, but I didn't know where it was coming from. And it's one of the reasons I've been so very grateful and have pushed people reading your book, because anyone who's followed a lot of even major evangelical leaders have heard them say things from the pulpit that are dramatically different than the biblical record, particularly on human sexuality, same-sex marriage, transgenderism, a sense of sort of not tolerance for people, but tolerance for sin. And it's been stunning to me to see this. You mentioned George Soros and that he's, let's just say, making contributions. Does he write a check to a pastor and say, don't say this anymore, here's what you need to say? How is this actually translating into the changed message of what historically have been very credible evangelical pastors?
Well, as you might imagine, the process is a little bit more complex than just writing a check and, handing it over in the dead of night at the railroad tracks or something like that. It doesn't really work like that. What happens is, if we take the case of, for example, George Soros and an issue that he has been heavily involved in, and that is trying to see open borders legislation, amnesty policies passed. What he has done is he supported a secular left-wing organization, in this case, one called the National Immigration Forum. And what it then does is it helps partner with evangelical leaders, and it creates a front group. You might say an AstroTurf campaign. In this case, a group called the Evangelical Immigration Table. And what they do is they publish a letter of general principles that any pastor would agree with. It will say something like, all immigrants, whether legal or illegal, are made in the image of God. Well, you and I would sign that letter as well. We absolutely agree with that. So
Sure.
A lot of pastors who don't understand the purpose of this organization, they don't understand where the funding is coming from. Another pastor who's a friend asks them, and they sign their name to that. And that general statement of principles is then used to lobby for specific legislation, like, for example, that Senator Langford bill that was defeated just a few months ago that would have admitted hundreds of thousands more illegals into the country for as much as just a few $1,000s in a fine or something like that. So these were really low bars that were being crossed. And you see that same sort of process playing out, whether it's climate change legislation, or as you brought up, even human sexuality. There has been tens of millions of dollars being funneled into evangelical churches and organizations and mainline. The last solid mainline denomination was the United Methodist Church that was still holding the line on marriage. We recently saw them fall, millions of dollars being funneled into specifically to change their doctrine from a secular left organization called the Arcus Foundation. So this is really playing out on any number of fronts, and that includes right up to this election.
Personal safety has become a major concern. So wouldn't it be helpful to have a new and easy way to protect you and your loved ones? Well, one way to stop the threat without having to shoot and possibly kill someone is available. Hello, I'm Mike Huckabee, and I found exactly how to have full protection without lethal force. It looks like a gun, acts like a gun, but it shoots chemical irritants and kinetic rounds, not actual bullets. The name is Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. Now imagine being able to protect yourself without the legal or moral concerns of carrying an actual firearm. The Byrna is legal in all 50 states. No background checks are required, and it can be shipped directly to your doorstep. Most importantly, it's built to immediately stop an attacker without taking a life. The peace of mind you have is free. It's easy to use and doesn't have the strong recoil that real guns have, and you don't need ear protection either. It's assembled by hand right here in the U.S., fully trusted by law enforcement, and oftentimes it only needs to be shown and not fired to turn an attacker away. Don't wait until something happens. Go to Byrna.com/Huckabee and learn more about this effective alternative to deadly force. 500,000 are out there already, and right now you'll get a special 10% discount too. That's Byrna with a Y, BYRNA.com/Huckabee. And don't feel vulnerable any longer.